Yeah, this is Michael Warnken here at Freedom Fest in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am here with
Michelle Darnell.
and you're a former Libertarian candidate. Is that correct?
Yes, I ran in 216, 217. 217, I got 31% of the vote in a deep blue district.
In a deep blue state.
And deep blue state.
What state was this?
Washington State.
And the office that you were running for is?
I was running for state representative.
Libertarians don't get elected very often. Most of them who run are running at a very big disadvantage. How did you do?
I think we did fairly well. We didn't do as well as I might have hoped, but I think that was just a consequence of the lack of apparatus in our political party and my failure to be able to put together that apparatus quickly enough. In my district, there were 91,000 registered voters. We sort of figured we needed to reach about 21,000. We reached 9,000, and that's reaching 9,000 people at the door. That's not to say that we didn't reach via alternative media. I was actually interviewed with our local TV station, our newspaper, Seattle Times, but we just weren't effective in reaching enough people at the door, in my opinion.
So, but you had a good ground game. You had supporters, but you felt as a Libertarian the party didn't support you as much as you'd hope, or as much as the other parties had.
Well, I'm not going to blame it entirely on the party. I think our party is still sort of in its infancy, but correct. We don't have the party apparatus that the other two parties seem to have. I mean, they've had decades and decades to build their party apparatus, and really, politics is not complicated. It's a numbers game. It's people times time times money. We're never really going to, well, I won't say never, but it's going to take us a long time to win on the money. So we need to use time to our benefit. And in my particular case, I started too late as well. And people. And we need to be able to effectively manage those people. I had over 100 volunteers that signed up, ready to go, but I didn't have the middle management people to direct those volunteers. And, those were some bad calls I made personally. Okay. I own that. And so that's why right now what I'm doing, looking forward to help other candidates and my own self, if I happen to run again, is to build that party, that structure so we can train some middle management type people. And when I say middle management, I'm talking campaign manager, treasurer, volunteer coordinator.
So what you're saying is perhaps if you were running as an RRD, more of that would have been available, and you would have had, or at least felt a little more success.
Correct. As a matter of fact, when I ran as a D in 2014, which was my first run, and I had no experience back then and no name recognition, which now I have a little bit. I got 37% right out of the gate. So I got 31% as a Libertarian, and I had already run a couple of times, so I had some name recognition. So you sort of see, the party apparatus, the party label behind you. People know what to expect. With Libertarians, when I go to the door, most of the time people are pretty happy to have an alternative, but they don't really understand what a Libertarian is, and they certainly don't necessarily know who I am. So that's why your ground game is so important.
Do you find that people have a positive response to the Libertarian message and when you talk to them?
Oh, absolutely. Usually, now, mind you, we do target. I would typically hit soft R's, soft D's, and independents.
So you could tell who a soft R was?
Yeah, I could. We had data. But of those people, and then sometimes, every once in a while I get a wild hair and I just hit anybody, But, overwhelmingly, people seem very happy to have an alternative. They just, sometimes they didn't know what a Libertarian really was. Hey, are you one of those people that wants heroin at my schoolyard? I had to
And what did you tell them?
I'm not that Libertarian, and, that's actually not my issue. I got into politics because of the crony capitalism, the bank fraud I saw, what I'm seeing in the courts. I actually think we need massive court reform. Where there is no justice, there is no liberty. And I don't think people are paying enough attention to what's going on in the judicial environment right now.
So the judiciary, you're saying that you see things that go on in the judiciary that are unjust, let's just say, and perhaps what you're suggesting is had you been elected, you might use the position in the legislature to start opening a door into that?
I might have worked on some things. One of the reasons that I was running was to make amendments to the Deed of Trust Act specifically, and we don't have enough time in this interview to really go into those details. But that's a non-judicial foreclosure process in my state that I wanted to address. Now, as I've been involved...
And you've seen abuses in that?
Absolutely, 100%.
And you feel that that the legislature, which you believe is not taking it up, should take it up?
I believe they should. I believe that they are failing to see the connection of those abuses and the current homelessness crisis. When I ran in 2014, I was talking about this, and I was talking about the train that was coming our direction in terms of homelessness. I was told by sitting legislators at the time, Michelle, why are you talking about this issue? Nobody cares about homelessness. Well, fast forward now to 2019, we have a massive crisis. We bailed out the banks to the tune of $7.7 trillion. They in turn kicked people out of their homes.
And they were making bad loans as well.
Well, we can go into all that, but the reality is there's a lot of misrepresentation. They use the HAMP program as a bait and switch. Long story short, they rigged the system, kick people out of their homes, and then there's other factors as well that affect supply and demand. But what happened was then rents go up because you have increased demand. Yeah. People who can't keep up with rent and come up with a first, last, and a deposit, well, where do they end up? They end up on the street. If they end up on the street, sometimes they become part of this culture. They're exposed drugs, alcohol, those sorts of things. So
and they have no one in the legislature that are advancing this issue on their behalf.
They don't have a voice in the legislature. I mean, it's... I'm not going to say that there's nobody in the legislature that cares.
But it sounds like you would make a very direct and concerted effort on that.
Well, absolutely. It's why I was running. I've got a fire in my belly. I care about the people.
Well, you and I have known each other for a couple of years, and you know one of my issues, which is district size, lack of representation.
Yes.
So as a person who's run for Senate, it's a fairly large district.
I ran for Senate and I ran for State House.
And would you feel that if there were more reps and smaller districts, that would it be easier to run, and two, do you think you'd have a better shot?
Well, absolutely. It'd be less expensive to run. And remember when I mentioned the 91,000 voters? If my district was more like 10,000, I could reach those doors. And not only that, but once I got elected, I could have more interaction with those voters. I think right now, what ends up happening is your particular vote, because it's such a large district, the power of your vote diminishes significantly, and it also makes the single, the electeds, the legislator or whatever you're looking at, more valuable and more up for the, up for the taking.
And they would likely be resistant to this.
I would expect they would be resistant to this.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're needing to move along here, but it was important for me to meet with you. I appreciate you. We've only had a few women, and it's good to see a good, active libertarian woman. Anything you want to plug right now?
Well, you need to get more women. 32% of the Libertarian Party is women, but half of the voting population is women. We got a little problem there. So, Michael, interview some more women.
All right. You got it. All right. Well, thank you very much. Back to the studio for you, William Niger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Michelle. They're from the state of Washington at Freedom Fest. And I later did an interview with her, which was about a week ago, on bank and judge allowing fraudulent documents by attorneys claiming to represent bank, and I can't wait to bring you that interview.